Good day, boys and girls. We meet again for our lesson today. Remember last time we were looking at balancing of our accounts in the general ledger, meaning to say each account now has got its closing balance. Now the next step after we have balanced accounts in the general ledger is to proceed with our cycle of the accounting process, which eventually leads us to the trial balance. Now, the trial balance can only be done after we have closed off the accounts and we know the balance of each account in the general ledger. So that is why now we are at the trial balance stage. So we are going to be going through this lesson as I'll be explaining to you how do you prepare the trial balance. What is the purpose, what is achieved by preparing the trial balance, and I'll give you two examples of doing the trial balance, and then you will do your own and practice and prepare yourself for the examination. Now, the purpose of the trial balance. After the completion of the general ledger, let me put my pen here. After the completion of the general ledger, the trial balance will be prepared to control the correctness of the general ledger. In other words, with that point we are saying we use the trial balance as a measuring tool to see if all the entries in the general ledger have been correctly recorded. So the trial balance is used as that tool. The trial balance is a summary of the general ledger. In other words, you can say it is the summary of the account balances extracted from the general ledger. So for those accounts that you have prepared in the general ledger and balanced them all, you just go to each particular account and take the name of the account and the balance, the name, the balance. That's the trial balance. That is why here we are simply saying it is a summary of the general ledger. The trial balance consists of two columns, that is the debit column and the credit money column. We will see that when we do the practice of it. Accounts with debit balances or totals in the general ledger will be placed in the debit column of the trial balance. So you need to take note of this point. Let me just highlight it for you there so that you can see what I'm talking about here. I'm saying here accounts which have got debit balances in your general ledger, when you take them to the trial balance, you record those amounts in the debit column of the trial balance. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, and then accounts which have got credit balances or totals in the general ledger. Okay, those that have got this credit balance in the general ledger, they will be placed also in the credit column when you go to your trial balance. So these are two important things that you must know on how we use these two money columns, the debit and the credit. For an account which has got a debit balance, it's put in the debit column. An account which with the credit balance is put in the credit column. That is how you record your information in your trial balance. Then the total of the debit column will be the same as the total of the credit column of the trial balance. In other words, now after you've recorded all accounts that have got debit balance in the debit column and all accounts that have got credit balance in the credit column, when you add these two sides, they must both add up to give you the same amount. They must give you the same amount. If not, then it tells you that something is wrong. So this shows that we have applied the principle of double entry correctly with posting from the journals to the general ledger. This shows us what shows us the fact that the amounts are going to be the same. That confirms that we have done the posting correctly. It also shows us that the work is mathematically correct at this stage, meaning to say all our entries have been, our amounts rather, have been added correctly, and hence we will be having the same answer for both the debit column and the credit column. The trial balance is done monthly to ensure the correctness of the general ledger before we can continue to the next or following month. That's one other thing. So we are preparing the trial balance every month end. So that that certifies for us that what we have done in the first month is correct. Move on to the next one up until we finish the whole year, that is our financial year. Therefore, a trial balance on the last day of the financial year or financial period ensures that we will calculate the profit of the business with the correct information and amounts, because we'll be checking this information every month and as we do the trial balance. So there's no way we can now use wrong information at the end of the year. So that is another importance of doing the trial balance. The trial balance can help prevent us from calculating a wrong amount as profit of the business, because we shall have done all these accurate checks as we be preparing the trial balance at the end of every month. Now here's an example of your trial balance. I have taken this one here. It's a trial balance from Blades Printers as at 30 May 2000. Now this is your heading for the trial balance. You must indicate it's a trial balance, then of whom you write the name of the business, and then you write as at, then you write the end of that particular month you are dealing with, as well as the year in question. That's your heading. Then from there we can now move forward and show the columns here. So as you can see, we have got two money columns, that is your debit column and your credit column. Those are the ones that we're talking of here. In this section here, that is the details. That's where you'll be writing the names of the account. So you write the name of the account, then the amounts are written either in the debit column or the credit column. Right, so also remember that since we are saying the trial balance is a summary of the general ledger, so the way your accounts appear in the general ledger is the way they are going to appear also in your trial balance. So obviously we will have the two sections of the general ledger, that is your balance sheet section as well as the nominal account section. So we will always start with the balance sheet section, then we go to the nominal account section. So we start with the first account here. The first account was capital. Now with capital, once you have written the name of an account here, now the next thing is for you to decide to say, okay, in which column do I record it? So what guides you to know which column? You are guided by the fact of where does that account increase. So capital, I believe you all know that it increases on the credit side, so the amount will be on the credit side. But also remember there's this column of folio. Folio is simply used to use the account number or the reference number of this particular account in the general ledger. Since we are in the balance sheet section, so the first account will be recorded here as B1. As you can see here, the first account, it will be recorded as B1, and then capital increase on the credit side, so we write the amount there on the credit side, full stop. Then the next one is drawings. Again, that becomes B2. Then drawings increase on which side? On the debit side, so you record the amount there. Next account is land and buildings. Land and buildings, that becomes our B3, and this is an asset. Land and buildings, remember, it's an asset, so as an asset it increases on the debit side, so it will have a debit balance, so it will be put in the debit column as well, right? Then the next one is equipment. Again, equipment is an asset, it becomes our account number 4, so B4. Assets increase on the debit side, we put the amount in the debit column. The next one here is bank, and bank is an asset, that becomes B5, and the amount is on the debit side. Remember, all assets increase on the debit side, so assets will always be recorded in the debit column of your trial balance. All right, then from there we move on to cash float. Cash float, again, it's also an asset, and being an asset, therefore it is okay, that's B6, and it increases on the debit side again. So we go to the debit side and we record our amount. That is how we are going to be recording the accounts that we'll be having in the balance section. Should we have more, you just follow the same principle. Then we now cross over to the nominal. Under the nominal account section, now our first account in the nominal account section becomes our N1, that is nominal account section, account number 1. So we have current income in this case. Now current income, all incomes, remember, they increase on the credit side, so we'll be recording this amount in the credit column. So we put our amount there. Then the next one is rent income. Again, it's an income. Since it's number 2, that's N2, and you put the amount in the credit column again, followed by salaries. That's your N3, and salaries now is an expense, and remember, all expenses increase on the debit side, so we put the amount in the debit column. After salaries, we have insurance, and insurance is an expense. It being expense, we record it on the debit side again. And then the last one is consumable stores. Consumable stores is also an expense. Being an expense, that's N5, and we are going to record it in the debit column. So this is how we are going to be recording all your entries. Now we have completed making all the entries in the trial balance now. So the last thing that you need to do now is to add all the amounts that are in these 2 columns. So you add the debit column, you put a total there, with the credit column you put a total there, and these 2 totals must agree, they must be the same. So in our case, the debit side gives us 276,500, and also the credit side gives us 276,500. So both sides are having 276,500, meaning to say that is our balancing figure for the trial balance. So this is how we prepare the trial balance, and that should be pretty simple and should not give us any problem. Now, having illustrated with this one, now I want you also to refer to your workbook. If you go to your workbook, you go to page 186. On page 186, there is a question, exercise 9.1. I'm going to use that one also to explain and illustrate some few more principles that you need to master when preparing the trial balance. Now, on page 186, you see that they say here, Anna Mukwena owned an agricultural supplies firm, Gr9. The following is a list of balances taken from her books on the 31st of December 2019. Now, so there is a list of accounts. Here, the accounts are given haphazardly. Remember, when you take them to the to the trial balance, they need to be recorded in the correct column, but in the correct categories or sections. But the most important thing here for us to note now is that the question that we are having there is saying, firstly, A. If you look at A there, I'll just quickly move my slide as you see that we are here. A says here, calculate the capital balance before preparing the trial balance. So here, we are not given the capital amount, but remember, there is no business that starts without capital. So capital is there. It's always there. It must always be there for any business. So in any trial balance, capital will be there. But if it is not given, then there is a clue that you must use to calculate the capital amount. I'm going to be doing that. Then B is now when you will then prepare the trial balance for Anna is at this particular date. If you consider the accounting equation, you will remember that the accounting equation says assets is equals to owner's equity plus liabilities. That's what the table that you are given there on page 186. Now, what it simply means is that this first column here, or these 2 columns, is where you'll be recording your assets. The next 2, your owner's equity. The last 2, liabilities. Now, you record the name of the asset, the amount, name of asset, amount, name of asset, amount, name of asset, amount, name of asset, amount. And then you add all these amounts for assets. That gives you total assets. Then you come to owner's equity. Now, owner's equity, remember, under the accounting equation is affected by what? All incomes, all expenses, plus drawings and capital. Now, in our case here, we are given sales. You need to remember that when we were doing the accounting equation, I told you that all incomes have a positive relationship with owner's equity. And I said it means that if an income increases, it means owner's equity will be increasing. If an expense increases, owner's equity will be decreasing, because expenses and owner's equity have got a negative relationship. There's an inverse relationship between expenses and owner's equity. So here, sales is an income. So when we received income, owner's equity increase. So you just write it like that there. Then cost of sales now. Cost of sales, remember, it's an expense. So it means it decreases actually your owner's equity. So here your amount actually is supposed to be shown here, because it's an expense. It must be shown in brackets to show that it's actually causing a decrease. The same applies with what? With insurance, because these two, they're actually showing a decrease of owner's equity. Then capital, we don't know the amount, and that's what we are calculating. So now if you deal with these amounts here, you will see that owner's equity increased by 100,000, decreased by 60, decreased by 2,000. Therefore, if you say 100,000 minus 62,000, then from the given amount here, we have our owner's equity at 38,000. But remember, this does not include capital, meaning to say the final figure for owner's equity must be 38,000 plus the amount for capital. Right, then you proceed. You go to your liabilities. In our example, we only had one, sundry creditors or simply creditors, 9,000. Then you add all these amounts here. So you now have got a total of all your assets. You've got 38 as part of your owner's equity, and then you have got 9,000 as all your liabilities. Now this is when now you need to apply those principles that you were taught in your primary level, when we were taught that 10 plus x is equals to 20. Then you find the value for x. So in our case here, assets is equals to owner's equity plus liability. Our assets are amounting to 73,000. Here it is. Okay, that's the one that's coming here, right? And then we are saying assets is equals to owner's equity. Owner's equity is what? Is 38,000 here, but it does not include capital. So we say plus capital. That's our x. All right. Then plus the liabilities, which is 9,000. So when you are given an equation like this, it should not give you a problem to solve the value for x. So in solving the value for x, in other words, you simply, these guys are going to move and cross the equal sign. And remember, when they move and cross the equal sign, they both change their what? Their sign. So plus 38 becomes minus 38, plus 9,000 becomes minus 9,000. That is why therefore we are having now x, because we shall have left x on its own. So it's now x is equals to 73 minus 38,000 minus 9,000, and thus our x is equals to 26,000. So 26,000 is therefore our capital figure. Now if you can then substitute this 26,000 into this equation, you put 26,000 here. If you say 26,000 plus this amount and this amount, they must add up to give you your assets. Then we have balanced our account equation. So this is how you are going to be finding your capital figure. You must practice this for the exam, because I want you to be able to calculate this, and you find a question of this nature in the exam that requires you to calculate your capital first before you can prepare the trial balance. Now, having done this, now remember all the figures, now we now have them. These ones, we only needed these ones for the calculation, but they don't go anywhere in the trial balance. So we can now move on to you are going to prepare your trial balance, and it should be pretty simple. Maybe I can also quickly illustrate this for you. If you want to calculate capital, remember capital is the first one. It is always the first one in the trial balance. If you don't want to use that system of first using the accounting equation, but the question said use the accounting equation, that's why we used that one. Another simple way of calculating our capital is just for you to first record all these amounts here. You just write capital and you leave it blank there. Then you record all the other amounts there, other amounts, as long as you are going to correctly record them. Then when you are done, you add these guys here. All of them, they are obviously going to give you, the debit side is going to give you 135. Then you say 135 minus this becomes your capital as well. That's another way of doing it, but I prefer that you use the accounting equation method, because it is based on a principle. Alright, so that is how we prepare the trial balance, and that's it. So for your practice, I want you to do your homework, which is activity 9.2. Activity 9.2, you find it on page 188 of your workbook. You must do both A and B. Remember, A is asking you to calculate the capital balance before preparing the trial balance, and they are saying already, as shown in your workbook, use the account equation to calculate the answer. Then B obviously is when you will be then preparing your trial balance. Remember to arrange your accounts in the correct order. You start with capital, drawings if it is there, then all your assets in the correct order, then you end with your liabilities, then you are done with your balance sheet section. Then after that, your nominal sales, if it is there, it's always the first one, followed by cost of sales, then others, they come in any order. Right, so this type of a question, please note, this type of a question, these are exam type of questions. You will find these kind of questions in your exam, probably your mid-year as well as your end of year. So we must do them carefully, so practice them. There are a lot of these activities that you can use in your workbook to practice them. And should you have a challenge, you are always welcome to text me or inbox me in my WhatsApp platform. Then we talk and I assist you. That is how we prepare the trial balance. That's the end of our lesson. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay free. Please be corona free.